Hi.
Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook. Y'all, today we are talking about Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. This is the third book in the Twisted series. Y'all, I'm telling you, this book, this series, I don't know why I took so long to read them. They seriously are so up my alley. They just hit every single checkbox of things that I love in books. The books that I really just can't put down. The ones that are so binge-worthy that I just fly through and I eat up. It hits them all. Really, this entire series is just a trope factory. I mean, book one, you've got brother's best friend, sort of enemies to lovers. Second book, you got like workplace romance, forbidden romance, age gap. Again, kind of enemies to lovers. And then this book, we have best friend's brother. And kind of like a workplace romance situation again, but mega, the most of all of the books, enemies to lovers. And I mean, you can tell it. I honestly love any book that has hate in the title, immediate buy. I don't know what that says about me, but reading Twisted Love, I was into it. Reading Twisted Games, it was God tier. Like, I still haven't stopped thinking about or talking about Twisted Games. It was incredible. So it's safe to say I was very excited to start the third book in the series because, I mean, hate and mega enemies to lovers, just like absolutely. And the couple in this book, because this series is like a companion novel series, we do kind of see the characters sort of build throughout, and we had gotten a lot of glimpses at the two characters this book focuses on. I had some mixed feelings, to be honest, going into it, because the guy I wasn't really obsessed with. Like, I hadn't loved what I had seen of him so far in the series. Like, I wasn't very interested. The girl we had seen some of, not a ton. I was kind of indifferent, but I did love the banter. Like, I could just tell it was gonna be a very spicy roller coaster. Basically, I'm here to say I freaking loved it. It was so good. As always, I want to do kind of like a spoiler-free-ish synopsis to start out, but then because this is the third book in the series, you guys are probably going on this journey yourself if you're watching this, so I want to talk about it a little more in depth, but yeah, let's just get into it. So, like I said, the Twisted series is a companion novel series, which if you don't know what that is, it basically means it's not one big fluid story that is cut up in parts. Basically, this series follows this group of friends, these four girls that all went to the same university together, and each book focuses on a different one of the girls and a different relationship that they're having with a different guy. Each of the stories is dual point of view, and I just love it. I so prefer companion novel series to regular series. I really only discovered them in the last year, and it makes for such a good experience because you get inside like all the characters' heads, and each book is like a totally fresh new story, but you do have like a bit of an overarching story that stays throughout, and then you get to know all the characters, and by the end it just builds, and it's so lovely. It comes together so well. I did say about Twisted Games whenever I reviewed that book, I did say I didn't feel like you had to read Twisted Love if you didn't want to. Like, it really could just be a standalone, where with Twisted Hate, I feel like, honestly, if you're gonna read this, I would say read the first two books. I just think at this point, the characters and the story has built to a certain point, and especially like Josh and Jules's relationship, the two characters this story focuses on, it's really helpful if you see how they started out, like their general dislike of each other from the very beginning and how that builds, and the banter, and understand there's a lot of conflicts that come up in this story that started in the previous books. Like, you really need to read the first two books if you're gonna read this one. I know some of you are gonna hate me for that, but I'm being real with you. You gotta do it. But yeah, this story follows Jules and Josh. Basically, their connection is that Jules is Ava's best friend and Josh is Ava's older brother. Gotta love it. Basically, Jules and Ava were college roommates, and they quickly became best friends. Jules and Ava are super different from each other. Ava's always been like sunshine, good girl. Jules has always been a little bit more wild. She's just very fun and spontaneous and out there, and is willing to push the boundaries, push the rules, get into a little bit of trouble, get into a little bit of fun. She's just got this really feisty fire within her. And Josh never really took a liking to Jules being Ava's friend. He just always thought that she was a bad influence on her, always put her in, you know, bad situations. He's just being the protective older brother, and there was something about Jules that he just didn't vibe with, didn't like. Like, he's always given her shit because she is like a redhead that is super like busty and curvy, so he's always called her Jessica Rabbit, which like she hates. He calls her JR, and it's just like that. It starts out with very basic things like that, but just over the years that they've known each other, because now like they're out of college and everything, like Jules has even finished law school and Josh is like a doctor now, like they've known each other many years. It's just that hatred, it's slowly built up and built up and built up, and they just have this rage towards one another. Like, they seriously can't even look at each other without like getting pissed off. Like, they just butt heads like crazy. They both give each other shit. They push each other's buttons. It's just like not a good time for them to be in the room with one another. But it comes up a lot because Ava is best friends with Jules. And if you read Twisted Love, then you would know as well that Ava, spoiler alert if you haven't read Twisted Love, don't be watching this video, but Ava is now dating Alex, who is Josh's best friend. So they just always end up in the rooms together, whatever, that's the point. So yes, as I've said, we don't like them being in the same room together, but at the start of the story, they're basically kind of forced to be in the same room with one another because they start working together. Jules has finished law school, or she's about to finish law school, and she's waiting to take her bar exam. She already has a position at a law firm, but she just has to get her bar results, and in between, she needs to make some extra cash, so she basically applies to work at this clinic that has to do with psychology. It kind of fits with her law degree, and it was an available position that paid some good money. And it just so happens it's basically attached to the hospital where Josh is doing his residency, and little does she know when she applies to and accepts the job, but he works at the clinic as well. He volunteers his time there. And so now these two people that could not stand each other have to spend tons of time with one another. And if you guys know me at all, workplace romances, enemies to lovers, workplace romances to be specific, is my favorite trope. Like, it's just always done so well. The forced proximity aspect mixed with people that already don't like each other. Like, when you're forced, so much of a romance book is like people interacting, right? And getting them in the same place at the same time, like what drives the story. And it's like the element of them having to be around each other all the time just always makes things so much more tense and just believable in a way. And I don't know, so they end up spending a whole lot of time together, even though they cannot stand each other. Bickering gets worse, the bantering gets worse. There's also various other things that happen at the start of the story that force them to hang out with one another. They can't stand each other, but things obviously come to a head where they realize that as much as they hate each other, there's that fine line between hatred and rage and also attraction. They both are very busy people. Again, Jules is literally like a law student on the verge of becoming a lawyer. Josh is a doctor in residency. Like, they have no lives, they have no time. They're both total playboys, which I haven't mentioned either. Like, Jules gets around, she's a pretty girl and she likes to have a good time. She doesn't have time for commitment, doesn't really care for it, and she's fine with putting herself out there, having some one night stands, getting some Tinder dates. She just does her thing and has a good time. And Josh is just complete and total playboy, like no interest in a relationship. Really the same sort of situation. He's super busy and he just hooks up with people, and they end up finding a mutually beneficial arrangement between the two after things come to a head one evening, and they realize that their hatred for each other really allows for some great times. So it pretty much turns into like not a friends with benefits, like a enemies with benefits sort of situation. I want to say that's even the teaser that Anna Huang has on like Amazon. I think she says it's like Twisted Hate, enemies with benefits romance, unless I made that up. I might make that up, but yeah, it's pretty much they make an arrangement, and we all know how these books go. The friends with benefits, no strings attached sort of stories. We know over time how they build. You want to keep it purely physical, but obviously the more time you spend with someone, the more you actually get to know them. And even if you hate them, you might see these other sides of them you didn't realize were there, or you might start to realize as you're bonding, like why they are the way that they are, things from their past that have caused them to be this certain way, and you realize that, you know, they might push your buttons and you might hate them, but nobody else is allowed to push their buttons because they're your buttons to push. Like, it just, It's just one of those. I absolutely loved it. Honestly, like when I started this book, it took me a little bit to get into it. The other two stories, I found myself just like gripped and attached right away. This story, it took me like a week to kind of get through the first like 100-ish pages. I don't know what it was. I think it just had a slightly slow start, honestly, up until the point where we're like learning that they're working together. But once it hit that moment where it was like good and it gripped me and I was like, okay, full speed ahead. Like couldn't put it down, couldn't stop. I was starting to wonder at the beginning, it wasn't like I disliked it at all, but I was just like, oh, I don't know if this one is like quite as good as the others. Again, I didn't love Michael.
Hi guys, Nikki from the future editing here. I don't have any explanation for this, but throughout the remainder of this video, I start calling Josh Michael, and then I alternate back and forth between calling him Josh and then Michael again and then Josh again. I don't know why. I think Michael is his dad's name. I don't know what was wrong with my brain, but his name is in fact Josh. I am talking about Josh the entire time. I'm sorry for any confusion, just wanted to clear that up. Okay, thanks, bye.
In the other stories, I didn't love him, and at the start of this book, when he's just a playboy jerk that's super arrogant, there's really a fine line when it comes to books, book characters, or just people in life, between like confident and hot and just being like a cocky asshole, you know? And at the beginning of the story, I was like, Michael's just a cocky asshole. Like, I'm not really into it, but he grew on me so much throughout this story. Like, so many people in my DMs have been telling me like Michael's amazing, like he's my favorite guy, and he's not my favorite. Still, for me, Twisted Games is like god tier, like the best. It's also just so different. Like this story, it's not super similar to Twisted Love, but it's a lot more similar to Twisted Love was than Twisted Games is to either of the stories. Did that statement make sense? I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point, but I'm just here to say I loved it. I thought it was really, really good. I'm so excited for the next book in the series, which I believe is going to be the last. And it's going to be Stella's point of view, which that character, we really have seen like nothing of Stella. I don't feel like I know anything about her other than she's like an Instagram blogger and works for a magazine. Like we really haven't seen any of her and her characteristics. Like she's kind of been the most in the dark, I feel like, for sure, of the characters. But yes. At this point, if you haven't read this book, I would exit the video because I want to say a few things. Y'all, I think possibly the spice of this book, I don't know what kind of sick in the head I am. I think it was the best overall of all the books so far. There were two scenes in Twisted Games. If you know, you know. The throne room, the library. The library, I think, might be like, I don't want to say the best spicy scene I've ever read in my life because like there's a handful that stand out, but that was absolutely like one of the best spicy scenes I've ever, like I was just like, what the actual F am I reading right now? So good. But this one overall throughout, like there's so many stories of like enemies to lovers, right? But so many of them just don't do it. I don't want to say don't do it right. What authority do I have on what is right? But I want a true enemies to lovers when I'm reading that. There's so many enemies to lovers stories where it's like after 5 seconds, they don't even really hate each other that much. Like I will expose myself, like The Hating Game is basically my favorite book of all time. People call that an enemies to lovers. And like, like they hate each other for like 5 seconds. And I'm not even mad about it. Like, yes, there's still bickers and banters. Bants? Am I English? What am I doing? But in this book, like Michael and Jules quite literally like despise each other for a good portion of this book. Even once they were like hooking up and stuff, they still didn't like each other. Like they still were pushing at one another and were fighting against it. Like I think it was just the perfect balance and the perfect flow of the enemies to lovers the way that it was. Like it just, so good. Jules' backstory, I don't know what it was for me, but it just felt like a little bit forced. I don't know, it was just kind of a lot for me. Then like her being a thief and like stealing stuff and that whole deal with Max, like it's like I don't feel like it was explained enough, her like relationship with Max and how it got to the point where they were like stealing stuff together and being like heist men. But it's like I also didn't want it to be explained more because I just wasn't that interested in it. I don't know, I just thought that part of the story was really weird. I do understand the aspect of like, because we've seen this throughout the whole series, like Jules is very much looked at as just like for her body, like a pretty girl, and she's, you know, gonna be a lawyer. Like, she's super smart, but so often she's judged for her body and literally just looked at as that. So I thought the whole aspect of, like, you know, the sex tape and her being blackmailed with that, and the idea of her career being on the line for the one thing that she's always trying to fight against. Like, I mean, she accepts who she is. Like, she's a sexy woman, she's out there, but like, she wants to be seen as more than that, because she is more than that. So I thought that that really like made for a well-rounded storyline, that aspect. But it's just like, I don't know, a lot of the other parts, like the craziness with her like mom and all that, like I just don't think, and I know we haven't seen that much of her thus far, but I just don't think that story fit her very well. And like the name change, maybe I'm just being overcritical of it, but something about her past, I just feel like sometimes in stories it's a little forced that like every character has to have, like, and in this series especially, it's like every character has to have like an absurd backstory of like they went through torment and their parents were like abusive and made them feel like shit, and they all have these like traumatic flashbacks. Like every character in this series has that, and I really didn't think that Jules was gonna be like that. Like, I thought, just from what we'd seen of her, I just thought she was gonna be like a badass girl that had a crazy time, and like I didn't really need, I don't feel like I needed that backstory. I think she could have still had the elements of like, oh, she's always just been grown up seen for her. I guess the aspect of like her mom being jealous of her because she was prettier than her or whatever went along with that, but I think we could have stuck more to a storyline of like, me and Anna as the author could have stuck more to like just the storyline of her always being seen as just a body and her pretty face rather than her mind, without all the extra like crazy stuff. I don't know how necessary it was. That whole storyline was a little bit interesting for me, but not that deep though, because literally like I'm saying, I loved this book. I'm just being nitpicky at this point. Josh, his character development, like that shift in him, the line of him being like, I went from wanting to kill you to being willing to kill for you, like when that snap happened and he like realized what he felt for her. And also, oh my god, when she betrayed him, when she lied to him, I mean, we knew it was coming, it was so fucked up, but whenever he got hurt because literally every person in his life that he trusted had lied to him. I hated Michael in the beginning of this story, but in that moment I really felt for him, because it was just like, shit. Like what he did to Jules was so awful, like in that moment. Like saying he forgave her and then being like, I lied, like that was so fucked up. But also like, she kind of deserved it a little bit. I don't want to say she deserved it, but also, yikes. Also completely unrelated, random. The nickname Red, like when he started calling her Red, I know it's like not that deep. It's not like the most creative nickname ever, but something about it was so, when it went from him being like, I'm calling you Red because I see red when I look at you, and him originally using it like offensively, like, okay, Red, to like, okay, Red, you know, like I love that. I love when a nickname goes from something that's like derogatory and like meant to be offensive to like a affectionate nickname, or like a spicy little moment shared between you two. I loved it. I was so here for it. But yeah, that is it for me today. If you guys read Twisted Hate, I would love to hear your thoughts. I would love to hear which of the books in the series is your favorite. I still am all about Twisted Games, but I really did like this one. Yeah, very excited for the next book. I think it comes out in June. I don't know how Anna or Anna? I feel like I always call her Anna, but it's probably Anna. She's pumping these out so fast. True talent, a true queen. But yeah, that is it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.